All right. So what Farone posits, and I think he's correct here, is that a lot of the women recorded doing these rituals were sex workers. So we see that prostitutes and courtesans in literary evidence suggest that these women who are operating as sex workers, sort of, I'll nuance that in a second, would adopt and adapt to typically male using love magic technology. All right. Prostitute is someone who's like almost a classic sex worker. She is on short contract. She could be picked up. She's arranged. She does her services. A courtesan is something else. A courtesan is a woman who engages in sex professionally, but she's usually not married. She's well educated. She adopts other women and trains them not only in the arts of making love, but more importantly, in rhetoric, in aesthetics, in conversation. A courtesan is thought to be an elevated companion for a male. And we have evidence of courtesans even wearing male togas and engaging in male competitive games in Athens. So courtesan and prostitute are very different. And they don't map onto like our simple notion of a sex worker today. So one of the things we see in the literary record is we see those apple rituals. Remember the cursed apple, the cursed stone fruit? And we'd see that that prostitutes and courtesans would use these apple spells in the same way that men would use to seduce young male clients directly. And one other interesting argument that Farone makes all over the place is that a female sex worker takes a sexually aggressive stance that is analogous to an active male seeker of sex, of desire, an erastes. So when you're thinking of a courtesan or you're thinking of a prostitute here, think of them as being like men out on the prowl, and think of the men who are being gone after by them as being more like passive, meek, chaste, needing to be sort of convinced. Now, later literary records in Latin shows a lot of courtesans and prostitutes using agoge rituals. Also, there's examples literarily worldwide of how men are afraid of or they are told to be very fearful of aggressive women and prostitutes who will use love magic against married men. Though I would argue, that could just be a good way for men and women to save face. Oh, my husband was unfaithful. Well, that courtesan used love magic on him. So the courtesans and prostitutes would have had the desire to lure wealthy young male clients away from their homes, away from their families, just like men wanting to do eros magic or trying to get women away from their homes, away from their families. So there are other instances, such as a courtesan may wish to get a man away from his girlfriend or a rival lover. In this, like I'd said, the prostitute and the courtesan stand as erastes, as the older active lover pursuing the younger eronymos, the passive lover in the relationship. This is an inversion. So the men become like the young women, the prostitutes and courtesans become like the sorcerer males. So what does it look like to have a woman in this sort of active position? Well, we see this spell. Delphus vexed me, and I burn this laurel against him. And just as these laurel, and that's a specific, like a laurel leaf, like rest on your laurels. Okay. Leaves shriek, and just as these laurel leaves shriek loudly as they catch fire and suddenly burst into flames, and we cannot even see their ashes, so too may Delphus completely consume his flesh in the flame. You, Ionks, drag him to my house, my man. Just as I melt this wax with the goddess's help, so too may Delphus of Mindus immediately, Autica, be melted by passion. And just as this brazen rhombus, that's that bull thing, is spun with the help of Aphrodite, so too may he be spun before our gates. You Ionks, drag him to my house, my man. It's kind of exciting. So that, in that sense, the female is in an active sexual position in the spell and in that relationship. So for prostitutes using eros, Farone argues, in fact, it makes good sense that courtesans in the in the ancient Greek world would use these types of aggressive male magic. Once we realize that as a group, they are in many ways quite similar. I'm not talking about prostitutes, I'm talking about courtesans. Sorry, this is just about courtesans. So this makes sense that they would be in the active, aggressive male position once we realize that a courtesan in many ways is like a Greek man, especially in their economic autonomy and their education. The successful ones, at least, live in their own houses, provide for their own income, and fall in love for first sight. They aggressively hunt their lovers and employ other types of public stances and gestures that were traditionally limited toward males. And then he makes this anthropological reference about prostitutes somewhere who wear like men's clothing and stand in very sexually aggressive ways as they talk to their clients. All right, so a courtesan or prostitute could use Eros magic and agoge magic in order to get clients. But how would they hold on to their clients? Well, we can see philia being common for a courtesan. If she is in a settled monogamous relationship with a lover, playing her role as a palike, mistress or concubine, she is much more likely to use the forms of philia magic that would be appropriate for a wife. For instance, we read, when Philioneus, when his Philioneus's palike, in Antiphon's speech, hears that he is going to break off their domestic relationship and send her back to the brothel, she uses a love potion typical of a married woman, because at this point in her life, her social role is very similar to that of a wife, and she makes similar emotional demands on her partner. She administers the fatal potion because she wishes to be more loved by him, so she makes the error and kills him, not because she wants to seduce him. So courtesans actually, in fact, are regularly described in the same terms as an autonomous male lover in a male-male relationship. And a wonderful play called the Lysistrata, Lysistria, whose main character, is said to use the ionks to draw forth men. And in fact, the Greek text actually says that this is a manly thing that this woman does. It's most manly. Lysistrata is actually a great play. It's about women who are so sick of war that they stop having sex with their husbands. And then there are these great scenes in it where the men will have just these giant engorged phalluses because they're so miserable from not having sex. And I've seen this adapted a couple of times, and it's very funny every time. It was funny once upon a time, it's funny now. Okay,